Part 1. The Forbidden Whisper, the Night of the Offering. Before the mountain spoke my name, our village knew no gods, no kings, only the rhythm of soil and season, planting, bleeding, burying, and waiting for death like a ritual no one dared to question. But above us loomed the black mountain, jagged, silent, breathing. The elders whispered, "The mountain sees all, the mountain remembers all." And when the moon turned black, when winter stretched beyond 30 nights, the village would choose a child. Not the strongest, not the weakest, but the one marked by fate. That year, it was me. The night was so cold, blood would freeze before it could spill. The entire village gathered at the mountain's foot, torches trembling in their hands, not from wind, but from fear. I remember my mother's hand, steady. Her face was stone as the elders smeared ash across my brow, wrapped my body in crimson silk. Not a single tear fell. Here, tears were prayers for demons. My father had vanished long ago, leaving behind only one bitter truth. It is better not to love what the mountain will take. The path upward sang no hymns, only screams of the forest. Ancient pines twisted like claws tearing at the sky. The wind cut my skin like knives. And in the distance, I heard voices, not human, but prayers spoken backwards, carved into the stones themselves. At the summit, they laid me upon the altar, stone, colder than death itself. I closed my eyes, waiting for the knife, but no knife came. Only darkness and memory, not mine, but older, heavier. It seeped into my skull like roots cracking stone. I saw oceans boiling with blood, skies burning with flame, beasts with eyes like burning coal, and a man alone, barefoot, holding the blood of his children in his hands. Then I saw myself, ancient, eternal, cursed. When I opened my eyes, the altar was warm, the crimson silk stiff with frost and sap, black as ink. The elders were gone, the forest silent, and the heartbeat of the mountain pulsed beneath my feet. I walked back down into the village. No one greeted me. No one spoke my name. Only whispers followed in the wind. The blood offering. From that moment, I belonged neither to them nor to the darkness waiting in the trees. Something old, something hungry, had opened its eyes inside me that night. Part 2. The First Hunger, the Weight of Eternity. The first days after the mountain changed me were filled not with triumph, but silence. I waited for my heartbeat to return. It never did. I waited for the cold to pass. It deepened. Even the sunlight felt wrong, not burning, not warm, but distant, as though the world itself had taken a single step back from me. Children no longer ran in the dirt roads. Doors barred shut when I passed, and my mother, the one face I longed to see, locked herself inside, prayers leaking through the cracks of her wooden door. It was not hatred I saw in her eyes the last time they met mine. It was something far worse. Recognition. The first time I bled, I learned the truth. A stray dog, starving from the winter's famine, lunged at me, its teeth tearing into my arm. But when my blood touched the earth, it hissed like boiling oil. The animal fled, whimpering, its fur smoking where my blood had splashed. From that moment on, I knew I was no longer human. I was something the world itself rejected. Hunger came slowly, not for bread, not for water, but for something deeper, thicker, something that pulsed in others' veins, like a song I could no longer unhear. At first I resisted. I drank from streams, from snowmelt, gnawed bitter roots until my teeth cracked. But the ache grew louder. Every heartbeat I heard in the village became a drumbeat in my skull. Every breath a whisper of temptation. It was not hatred that drew me to them. It was memory. The memory of warmth, of life. I tried to pray, but the gods had turned their backs long before the mountain had claimed me. No church stood here, no altar but stone. And in the silence between my thoughts, I heard another voice. Not divine, older. Drink, and remember what you are. The night I first fed was the night I lost the last fragment of my name. A lamb wandered into the abandoned hut where I slept. I tore into it without thought, warmth flooding my body like fire. But fire fades. The next night it was a bird, then a man. And when I tasted human blood, I understood why the mountain had chosen me. Blood was not merely sustenance. It was memory. Every life I drained poured their joys, their fears, their secrets into my mind. I saw their births, their first loves, their betrayals, their deaths. With each soul I consumed, I carried not only their strength, but their sorrow. And with every heartbeat I stole, I became less myself and more the mountain. By the time the elders came for me with fire and chains, I no longer feared death. Death had already left me behind.
Part 3. Buried beneath the mountain, the silence that watched. They dragged me through the snow, my body bound in chains of iron blackened with salt. Each link burned against my skin, not with fire, but with memory. The elders did not speak. Their faces were veiled, as though to hide their fear from the thing I had become. At the mountain's base, an altar waited, older than the village, older than the first prayers whispered to the gods who had long since abandoned us. The stone pulsed faintly beneath the frost, like a heart too vast for the earth to contain. "Returned him to the roots," one elder whispered, and the chant began. They did not kill me. Killing would have been mercy. Instead, they buried me alive, bound me to the rock with runes carved in blood and ash, sealed the chamber with 7 stones, each marked with the spiral of the mountain, a symbol I would come to know better than my own name. The darkness was not silent. For days, or centuries, I could not tell which, I heard the whispers of the dead, children crying for mothers they no longer remembered, lovers calling out to names long forgotten by time, and beneath it all, the heartbeat. Slow, steady, endless. The mountain itself was alive, and it spoke. "You are not cursed." The voice was deep, older than language. "You are chosen." "Chosen for what?" I whispered into the void. "To open the door they fear." I begged for release. I prayed for death. Neither came. Instead, the world above changed. Empires rose and fell. Plagues swept through the valleys. Wars drenched the earth in blood. And in every drop of that blood fed the heartbeat beneath the stone. When I finally clawed my way out of the mountain's womb, the village was gone. The people who buried me were dust. Only ruins remained. Shards of clay idols, splintered wood, graves devoured by moss. I walked among their bones in silence. I did not know their names, but I could still taste their fear. The world I emerged into was darker than the one I left. not because of night, but because humanity had learned new ways to kill each other. The banners of kings replaced the prayers of priests. Churches burned witches by the dozens. Pits filled with plague victims lay open under the moon. And in every horror, I heard the mountains whisper, "Do you see? Even without you, they still hunger." I wandered ruins and battlefields, drinking only when the ache became unbearable. Each life I stole brought me centuries of memory I could not carry. Kings screaming for mercy on the scaffold, children begging the heavens for bread, priests dying with curses on their tongues instead of prayers. And the more I fed, the more I realized the hunger was not just mine. It belonged to the world itself. One night, in the ruins of a monastery blackened by fire, I found an old woman waiting for me. Blind, skeletal, wrapped in rags embroidered with the spiral of the mountain. "You were the first," she whispered. Her voice cracked like dry leaves. "But never the last." When I asked her what she meant, she only smiled. "The mountain is not alone anymore." And then she crumbled into ash, as though she had been waiting centuries for that single moment.
Part 4. The First War. Blood Against Blood. When I left the monastery's ruins, I believed solitude would save me. I walked alone for decades, feeding only on the blood of animals, starving myself to silence the hunger. But hunger is patient. It waits. It learns. And when it finally returned, it was not only inside me, it walked beside me. I was not the only one the mountain had touched. Others, born of despair, of betrayal, of blood spilled unjustly, rose from their graves twisted and pale. I saw them lurking at the edges of villages, faces familiar yet hollow, eyes that reflected no fire. They were my kin, but not my family. We were not united. We were predators, and predators do not share. The first wars were silent, shadows tearing at shadows in the forests, feeding on each other when human blood grew scarce. But it was not enough. Hunger always demands more. One winter night, a scream echoed through the valley, a child's scream. By dawn, an entire village lay in ruin, blood frozen in the snow, doors ripped from hinges, bodies pale and hollow. And standing in the center of the carnage, I saw her, the healer, the woman I had once loved. Her face was the same, but her smile was wrong. "You made me," she whispered. Her voice was soft, almost tender, but her hands dripped red. Behind her, others emerged from the shadows, dozens, hundreds, a bloodline born from my sin. Humanity fought back in desperation. They forged stakes of ash and iron, blessed them in churches that smelled of smoke and fear. Crosses were carved into doorframes. Garlic hung from every window. Graves were dug shallow, so the dead could be burned at the first sign of movement. But faith alone could not stop us. It was then that something new entered the war. The wolves. Not beasts of nature, but creatures born of rage, a curse I had cast out of myself centuries earlier. Their howls split the night, low and mournful, yet filled with vengeance. The first time I saw them, it was beneath a blood moon. A pack of 7 tore through a vampire coven, fangs against fangs, claw against bone. They fought with no fear, their bodies burning under holy fire,
yet refusing to fall. The wolves were not allies to humans, nor were they allies to me. They were balance, a cruelty the world had birthed to oppose our own. The war burned across centuries. Villages turned to ash, forests soaked in blood. Humans prayed louder, but the heavens remained silent. And through it all, I wondered, as witness, neither savior nor monster, but something in between. I buried the dead when I could. I burned what I could not bury. And every time I looked upon the ruins, I asked the same question. Was this punishment or prophecy? One night, I stood at the edge of a battlefield littered with corpses, vampires, wolves, humans, all alike. The air stank of iron and smoke. The snow beneath my feet was black. In the silence, I heard the mountain's heartbeat again, and in that rhythm, a whisper, "Not yet."
Part 5. The Pale Court, Thrones of Hollow Light. Centuries passed, yet the hunger never truly slept. It changed. It learned to wait, to whisper instead of scream. And in that silence, something older than even the mountain stirred. I first felt it beneath the ruins of a cathedral, its bells long silent, its walls blackened by fire and fear. The air there tasted of iron and salt. The stones pulsed faintly, as if remembering every prayer ever whispered, every scream ever silenced. At the altar, 7 thrones stood in perfect symmetry, carved from obsidian veined with veins of pale gold, and seated upon them were the Pale Court. They were not kings, nor priests, nor saints. They were echoes, figures draped in robes of white, so luminous they blinded, yet their faces were hollow, smooth where eyes and mouths should have been. When they rose, they did not walk, they drifted. And when they spoke, their words were not heard, but felt. A vibration in bone, a hum in the blood. Child of ash, they called me, bearer of the first hunger. They knew me, not by name, but by curse. The leader of the Pale Court descended. In his hand, he carried a cross of bone, but not the holy kind whispered in human prayers. This cross was inverted, its edges dripping with black ichor that hissed when it touched the stone. He placed it before me. "You are neither man nor God," he said. "You are lock and key. The bloodline you began will end in you, or through you." Behind him, the court chanted, their voices layered, not words, but vibrations that bent the air itself. Symbols ignited on the cathedral walls, spirals, serpents, suns swallowed by black. The ceiling above cracked open, revealing not sky, but endless night. I demanded to know their purpose. Why summon me now, after centuries of silence? The leader answered with a single phrase, etched into the marrow of my mind. "Hell remembers its bargains." And in that moment, I understood. The war between vampires and wolves, between hunger and rage, was never ours. It was theirs. We were pieces, sacrifices, prayers answered in reverse. The Pale Court offered me a choice: kneel and carry their mark, or resist and watch the world burn. But what they did not know was this: I had already burned. So I refused. And when I did, the cathedral shook. The crosses turned to ash, the thrones cracked open like eggshells, and something vast, something buried beneath centuries of silence, began to wake.
Part 6. The Crimson Genesis, when hell opened its eyes. The cathedral walls screamed before they crumbled, not with sound, but with memory. Every prayer whispered there, every child offered to silence, rose in a single deafening roar. The pale court did not move, their hollow faces tilted upward, listening to something only they could hear. Above them, the cracked ceiling bled light, not holy light, but a red so deep it felt alive. And then I heard it. A heartbeat. Slow, steady, older than stars. Not mine, not theirs. The mountain's heart. The first hunger. The ground split open. Chains, thicker than trees, snapped like brittle glass. Flames erupted, but they burned black, casting shadows brighter than the fire itself. From the abyss rose a hand, bone and sinew, dripping molten ash. Its nails carved sigils into the air. Each mark burned itself into my skin. I fell to my knees, my chest splitting open, light pouring from every vein. It was agony, but not the agony of dying. It was birth, rebirth. Child of ash, the pale court intoned in unison. Do you yield to the blood that bore you? I tried to scream no, but the word that left my lips was yes. Wings of bone erupted from my back, laced with veins of fire. My eyes burned white, and the hunger I had buried for centuries, roared awake. I felt every heartbeat in the world at once, every vein, every pulse. I could taste the oceans. I could hear the mountains breathing. I could see the stars weeping. The pale court bowed, not to me, but to what stood behind me. I turned, and there it was. The Eye, the first vampire, the oldest hunger. Not a creature, not a god, but an idea made flesh. Its voice crawled into me. You were never my enemy. You were my door. And then the world opened. Part 7. When the Sky Remembered. The War Beyond Flesh. The first scream did not come from hell. It came from the earth itself. Mountains cracked open like skulls split by unseen hands. Rivers boiled upward, their waters twisting into black spirals that rained back as crimson mist. Cities far beyond the cathedral, places that had never whispered my name, collapsed in unison. Glass towers buckled as though made of sand. Bridges tore free from their anchors and vanished into the sea. The Eye did not move. It did not need to. Its hunger spread through memory alone. Every secret sin, every buried shame rose screaming into the light. People fell to their knees, clawing at their own faces as if trying to peel away the truths they could no longer deny. I stood in the center of it all, wings burning, bones singing with a power I never sought. It would have been easy to surrender, to let the hunger consume me and watch the world burn as penance. But then, I felt a hand. Small, human, steady. The child. Their eyes, untouched by curse or memory, looked into mine, not with fear, but with recognition. "You are not it," they whispered. "You are still you." For a moment, the roar of the pale court, the trembling of the eye, the screaming of the mountains, all went silent. A single truth burned through me. Power was never the curse. Forgetting was. I closed my eyes and saw it all. The mountain, the altar, the first hunger. Not as a punishment, but as a wound. The wound of a world that had severed itself from balance. We had worshipped hunger, fought hunger, but never listened to it. What if the hunger was never evil? What if it was only lost? I turned to the eye. "If I am your door," I said, "then I choose what walks through." The pale court screamed. Chains of fire lashed toward me, but the child's hand in mine grounded me in something older than hunger. Hope. I stepped forward into the eye's light, not to destroy it, not to surrender, to become whole.
Part 8. The Forbidden Dawn. A World Rewritten.
The moment I stepped into the eye, the world ceased to have edges. There was no sky, no ground, only the pulse, slow, steady, older than creation itself. I saw the truth, not as vision, but as memory. The hunger was never mine alone. It was the echo of creation's first cry, the longing of matter to return to light. Every god, every demon, every monster was born of that same yearning, to belong. The eye did not devour me, it mirrored me. Every curse I had carried, every sin I had feared, reflected back as stars breaking free from night. The spiral burned into my chest, dissolved, not erased, but transformed, a circle unbroken. When I opened my eyes, the mountains were quiet. The crimson clouds faded into pale gold. The forests sighed as if waking from a long nightmare. The child stood beside me, their small hands still in mine, but older now, their face calm, knowing. "Is it over?" they asked. I looked at the horizon. The eye was gone, but its memory lingered in every trembling leaf, every ripple of the lake below. "Nothing ever ends," I whispered. "It only waits." We descended the mountain together, our footsteps light on soil reborn. Villages, long dead, began to bloom again. Birdsong returned to valleys where silence had ruled for centuries. The hunger was quiet, but I knew better. It sleeps. It always sleeps. Far beneath the ocean floor, in caverns deeper than time, a second eye opened, smaller, darker, watching. Not with rage, not with mercy, but with patience. The cycle will begin again. And when it does, will we remember? Or will we forget once more?